So I could think of no better way to start my podcast series than to talk about this issue of taxation in Sri Lanka. Because as we all know, people are facing multiple issues as a result of the increase in taxation. We all know that government justifies it by saying that they need revenue. I see when I go to a restaurant that the bill is always that much more because of the VAT being 18%. I see people suffering today. That primarily has to do with the fact that we see prices being quite high. So my question is today to discuss this matter of taxation, why the government did it, how it will impact us in the future. Why do we have such high indirect taxation, and aren't there other ways that we can collect this revenue?
Yes, Sean, it is the topic of the season, right?
Topic of the season, okay.
Indirect taxes.
Okay.
So, indirect taxes is not evolved recently. It's all been there. Initially, now we are talking VAT, value-added tax, but earlier we had goods and service tax. It was introduced to Sri Lanka in 1998. So, we had goods and service tax, VAT in different rates.
GST.
So, why we are talking now about VAT all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Because people are seeing that these taxes are being impacting their day-to-day lives. So they have seen the same bills before also. When they go to a restaurant which is a VAT registered organization, they would have seen VAT being charged on the bill on a different rate. Maybe earlier we had 15%. It was
now it's 18%.
18. It was at 8%. It was one of the reasons why they have all of a sudden had to increase back in 2020. So it's all because that of the fact of the changes that has happened in recent 3 or 4 years. So now they have increased. Why they have increased is, yes, it's because it is the easiest way to collect taxes from everybody. Because you don't need to point one person to collect taxes from their profits. Because it's not on the profits. It says value added tax on goods and services. If you are in Sri Lanka, if you consume anything, you have to pay tax knowing or unknowingly. Sometimes you just buy from a person, from a company, from an outlet anywhere, but you wouldn't know that whether that VAT is being charged. But if that person is a VAT register, you pay. So it's easy for the government to collect taxes for their, as you said, revenue mobilization or increase the revenue. For although their developments, they need a high taxes. That's why they have increased all of a sudden from 12 to 18. 12, it goes to 12 and 15, 18. So from this 3%, they are going to get more taxes from everybody to
the
meet
question
their
that
targets.
should be asked then is, are there any other ways to get this revenue?
There are
because
a lot of
we
ways.
all know that the reason for them doing this is to reduce the debt to GDP ratio. As you said, it's the simplest thing for them to engage. But obviously, it's affecting a lot of people in the process. And that is why we are discussing this today.
Of course, there are many ways. As I said, easiest, there are many other ways, direct or correct way to collect taxes. First of all, we can talk about the people who are not paying taxes. We call them as tax evaders. There are companies that have been defaulting taxes, and then there are taxes, basically the indirect taxes, because indirect taxes is on your profits. When you earn more, you pay taxes. So why they can't collect this, we have to then talk about the political thing, this is sociological thing.
I think better not get into the political part when it comes to me.
Of course. So that's why they have chosen this way. Otherwise, they would have easily go back. Anyway, Sean, recently in 2022, our indirect tax is our Internal Revenue Act. The Internal Revenue Department administer the income taxes. So under the Income Tax Act in 2022, amendment came in. There was a huge increase of indirect taxes. For example, we had a category called small and medium enterprise where they paid only 14% of income tax on their profit. But now there is no category called SMEs. Everybody, irrespective of amount, profit or irrespective of their turnover or revenue, you pay 30% tax. But whether the government is expecting or collecting the expected revenue of it, no. Why? Because it's direct taxes where they can play around their accounts so that they pay less taxes. They go on to find a way to reduce taxes. But in goods and VAT, no one can play around because it's marked
subject to everyone.
Yes, it's marked on the product or it's marked on the service. So easy.
That brings me actually to my second topic, which is basically why the government could have not figured out other ways to come up with this money than once again putting the burden back on the people. One such way phrase we all know about the term tax evasion. It's very clear. You see it on the newspapers. People will do their level best to avoid paying taxes. Now, I can understand why they also do it. They have mistrust towards the government. They feel the government is going to misuse their funds. So they will try their best to avoid paying taxes. We see that a lot with professionals, whether it's lawyers or whatever it is. Anyone who receives payments by cash can play around, as you say. So why isn't the government doing more to address things such as that happening in daylight than coming up with new policies that further impact the economic state?
So there should be a way to, as you said, to overcome this tax evasion. There should be a proper mechanism to find those people and then bring the undeclared sources of income to a declared to a correct channel. So as you said, yes, cash is the way the most tax evaders play around, because it doesn't come to a banking channel. They just keep that money in their pocket and then they consume, and then it doesn't go anywhere. So
it's not accounted for.
Yes, and then no one knows they are earning that money. So as you said, more than law, actually doctors, they ask cash. When you go to a clinic or hospital, they specifically, frankly ask that this should be paid in cash. But on one hand, yes, professionals, they have to think that they are the pioneers, they are the backbone of the country, that where they have to contribute to the tax system. But of course, there are issues like increasing in cost of living and other things are there. That's why they have wanted to safeguard themselves by not paying taxes or saving money, yes. But still, there are people who are affecting or paying because of the one set who are just evading. So if everybody fairly contributing, then who are affecting more, the burden will come down by government realizing that, okay, now everyone is paying, so that you have to reduce the rates gradually. For example, why I'm coming is this indirect tax. We only talk about VAT, Sean, but we have other indirect taxes.
Can you educate us?
There's one called SSCL, Social Security Contribution Levy. It's kind of another new tax came in after the corona to collect the taxes needed for the social security. Earlier we had, whether you know or not, NBT we had, Nation Building Tax. We had that NBT that is mainly to develop the northern and eastern provinces who are affected by the war. But I don't know whether that fund was actually used for that or not. But it was abolished on the basis that they have collected enough fund. Now they have introduced SSCL. So again, it's a 2.5%.
So it's just another way of collecting revenue with a different name,
but not for the use, for the intended use. So that you have 18% VAT, you have SSCL 2.5. Actually, you have TDL. If a restaurant, if it is registered with the Sri Lanka Development Board, they have to charge another tax called TDL, Tourism Development Levy, 1%. So actually 22.5% they are paying. In addition to that, they charge service charge. So all those things come around.
All those things together lead to a big bill.
Big bill, yes. So why that these professionals or the cash mechanism, if they are reducing that, then it will be reduced to collect the indirect taxes. So of course, that for this one initiative that government took was to initiate TIN application. Mandatory, that from 1st of January 2024, every 18 plus has to get a TIN. That was the mandated, but it wasn't actually properly implemented. We have recently seen.
Yeah, I think that is something I've come across, and I'd like to also get your point of view on this whole thing, Aaron. I saw how when I registered for my TIN, there was huge delays. On one hand, when they implemented the TIN, there were numerous businesses that ceased to exist. They just stopped operations. They couldn't afford it. At the same time, they were trying to attract new taxpayers through this tax identification number, and even then the process of registering us is delayed. And I think that's to do with the fact that they don't even know how to use this new system. Am I correct?
Correct. Because on one hand, they don't know how to use the system, and on the other hand, they didn't do a feasibility study to cater the mass new users to the system. So the system couldn't capable or didn't have the capacity to get all the users at a point. So it got crashed. That's why the one
system
delay.
Crashed.
Yes, that's why. So they had a stringent notice given, say that if you don't get the TIN by 31st January, actually, you will be
penalized
by 50,000.
Yeah.
So now I think they were all panicking.
Now they've withdrawn
and now people are like saying that
yeah,
exactly. So now it's like for 1 month it was a kind of a huge messages, huge topic to discuss all around the country, and now it's kind of a balloon
It's
that
something
just
that's gone under the rug.
exactly.
So Aaron, now tell me, you obviously have your own things going on. What is your opinion of the current taxation structure? Obviously it's unpopular with you as well. But how have you been impacted? Give us some real examples of how someone like you has been affected by this whole scenario.
Well, obviously, I can see that when you go to a restaurant, like you said, or to a shopping mall or anywhere, we can see a value-added tax.
Yeah.
So it's been charged as a percentage. So earlier the price tag would have been, for example, let's say 20,000, but now it comes up to 28,000. So that 8,000 would have been for something else as well.
That's a really good point, because I can just imagine how some people have their budgets for a month and now they have to revise that. On top of that, wage rates haven't increased. It's a very common problem. When you have inflationary pressures, the wage rate should be proportional to that,
Yeah,
so
but
that people can afford to live, but we don't do anything about, we don't redress that issue or address it, What about this RAMIS system?
RAMIS is the main system of IRD where they administer the tax collection or the taxpayers. It was introduced in 2015 actually, but important is the officers in the IRD. We have not now actually they are just learning after about 2015, 24, 9 years only they are just learning. Initially there was not much of a welcome to that system from the inside IRD.
From within the organization
itself. Why was that? One thing is that they have used to that legacy system which is morely towards the manual work. So one, and then second point is that as you know that from the IMF report, the top 3 institutions who are the corrupted, number one is IRD, corruption,
Customs, and what's the third?
third is excise department.
Oh my god, all under the finance ministry.
Yes. So you can't do corruption, so get this money underhand if you have a system in place, because you will be caught up.
That system will catch them basically.
Because they have internal audits, there are people who are authorizing. Unless everybody within that circle plays around, yes, then this is a possibility.
But isn't that what we need? Isn't that what we need to become a sophisticated country?
It is, but the thing is, the IRD is a kind of they are of course a server to the public. But if you go to a other country, European country, you see that they serve actually. When you go and ask a question, they politely give the answers and then they want to serve you as a public or as a server. But here it's different.
Here the mission is to serve, but the actual act is the total opposite.
Yes, we have to go like pleasing themselves, that kind of thing. So they can't do those things.
That's a big issue in Sri Lanka.
So they can't get that respect or get that thing done if you have a system, right? Because if you have a system, everything should be there in the system, then everyone will have access to that. So they don't want to have that. And then on the other hand, yes, corruption. They can't do a play around this thing. That's why they have been not welcoming the system, but we have to have that. There are a lot of improvements has to happen still, Sean, because from it says revenue administration information system. So administration part is happening, but from a taxpayer's point of view, it also should give you information readily whenever you want. Now, not 100%. For example, as you said, when you apply a TIN, you can't get the status of your TIN application unless you call and get a status from the department, which they will never pick your call. And once you file a return, say for example you have misplaced a return, you can't get a copy of it. There's a whole bunch of
because it's not paperless.
Yes, still it's actually online submission, but it does get stored in the system. It's just that get it, I don't know where it goes.
My God. And just to conclude this discussion, it's a very great start to a very broad subject. I just want to say thanks, and we will obviously look at it from another point of view next time. This is my first podcast, by the way. So thanks again. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too, Sean. Thank you.
Thanks.